Silent Guess. Chapter 12. The Shape of the Truth. Lucy read the final sentence for the fourth time. And do not trust the police. Rain struck the gravel around her hard enough to blur the ink where droplets reached the lower edge of the paper. Oliver stood beside her beneath the dark outline of Ravensmere House, one hand still holding the envelope by its corner, while the other remained clenched against the rain. Neither of them spoke immediately. Beyond the trees, the woman had vanished. Only seconds earlier, Lucy had seen her clearly enough to know she existed. A dark coat, a human silhouette, one backward glance before she disappeared onto the path towards the chapel. Now the grounds offered nothing but moving branches, wet stone, and darkness. Oliver looked towards the tree line. "We go inside." Lucy did not move. "Did you read it?" "Yes. And we go inside." "That isn't an answer." "No." He looked at her. "It is the sensible thing to do while someone we know nothing about is running around the island in the dark." Lucy folded the paper carefully, avoiding the wettest edge. "She knew my name." "Yes?" "She knew Elliot had found the right photograph." "Yes." "She knew Arthur trusted the wrong person." Oliver's jaw tightened. "And she wants you to distrust the police." Lucy held his gaze. "You noticed that part." "I would have had to work remarkably hard not to." The words might once have carried humor. Now there was none. Lucy looked back towards the house. The entrance hall glowed beneath the emergency lights, throwing distorted red reflections across the rain-dark windows. The others stood somewhere inside, waiting. One of them might have killed Arthur. One of them had certainly killed Elliot, unless the woman in the grounds had somehow entered and left Ravensmere House without anyone understanding how. And now Lucy had been handed a warning specifically designed to alter how she saw the one person she had trusted most since the murder began. Oliver seemed to understand exactly what she was thinking. "You should question me." Lucy frowned. "What?" "If that note tells you not to trust the police, you should question me." "You want me to?" "I want you to treat it the same way we would treat anything else." He glanced toward the envelope. Evidence from an unknown source with an unknown motive. Lucy looked at him carefully. "You sound like a police officer." "I am a police officer. That is currently the problem." Oliver gave the faintest nod. "Exactly." The admission unsettled her more than defensiveness would have. They returned to the house together. Nobody had moved far from the entrance hall. Henry stood at the foot of the staircase, Evelyn beside him. Andrew remained near Amelia's portrait, while Marcus paced beneath the gallery with visible impatience. Helen sat in one of the hall chairs, composed but pale. Neil stood near the open drawing room door. Every face turned towards Lucy and Oliver. Marcus looked behind them. "Well?" "She got away," Oliver said. "Who was she?" "We don't know." "You saw her." "We saw a woman in a dark coat." Marcus laughed without humor. "Excellent. That narrows Scotland nicely." Helen ignored him. "What was in the envelope?" Lucy looked towards Oliver. He nodded. "No secrets. Not now." She unfolded the paper. It was addressed to me. That alone changed the room. Andrew frowned. "Personally?" "Yes." "What did it say?" Lucy read the message aloud. Arthur trusted the wrong person. Elliot found the right photograph. If you want to know who killed them, stop looking at the dead and start looking at who benefits from every version of the truth. Then she reached the last line. And do not trust the police. Silence, not shock. Something subtler. The room's attention shifted towards Oliver. Marcus was the first to speak. "Well," Oliver looked towards him. "Go on. You cannot seriously expect everyone to pretend that means nothing." "I don't. You've been controlling the investigation since Arthur died." "I have." "You locked the study." "Yes." "You decided who could see evidence." "Yes." "You took everyone's statements." "Yes." Marcus spread his hands. "And now someone who apparently knows enough to predict Elliot's murder tells Lucy not to trust the police." Oliver remained calm. Correct. Marcus stared at him. That doesn't bother you? Of course it bothers me. You hide it remarkably well. Helen spoke quietly. So does guilt. Every eye moved towards her. Oliver looked at the retired judge. Do you think I killed them? Helen studied him. I think certainty would be irresponsible. Marcus laughed. You really can say anything without answering. Yes. Helen's gaze never left Oliver. It is one of the advantages of having spent a career listening to people who believe questions entitle them to convenient answers. Andrew stepped forward. Could the note mean Robert K.? Lucy looked towards him. What? Do not trust the police. Amelia already believed someone inside the police was corrupt. He glanced towards Helen. Kay suppressed her evidence. Henry nodded slowly. That would make sense. Marcus shook his head. Kay is dead. The note doesn't say, don't trust Oliver. No. Marcus looked towards Lucy. But it was handed to Lucy tonight. The distinction mattered. Whoever wrote the note knew the present situation. Not simply Amelia's old case. Lucy looked towards Oliver. What if it means both? Nobody spoke. Kay was police, she continued. Oliver is police. The writer may be warning me about a pattern rather than a person. Oliver nodded. Possible. Marcus folded his arms. Convenient again. Lucy turned. Marcus, not everything that fails to convict someone is convenient. His expression tightened. And not everything that sounds reasonable is true. That was fair. Lucy disliked that it was fair. The lights flickered overhead, once, twice, then steadied. Everyone looked upward. Neil frowned. The generator should have taken over cleanly. Can someone interfere with it? Oliver asked. Neil hesitated. Anything can be interfered with if someone knows what they're doing. That answer was becoming the architecture of Ravensmere House. Telephones, network connections, service passages, locks, power. Everything could be manipulated. Arthur's beautiful old home had become a machine filled with invisible roots. Lucy suddenly understood something. Whoever planned this knew the house. Neil looked towards her. That would help. No. She shook her head. More than help. Everyone listened. The false telephone number, the cellar junction, the service corridors, the hidden drawing room entrance, the ability to cut the power. Oliver's attention sharpened. The killer didn't simply learn these things after arriving. Exactly. Marcus looked towards Neil. The implication arrived instantly. Neil saw it. Don't! Marcus held up his hands. I didn't say anything. You didn't need to. Neil's voice carried an anger Lucy had never heard before. I have served that family for 23 years. That means you know every part of this house. Yes. And Arthur trusted you. Yes. So did Amelia. Neil stared at him. Yes. Marcus continued despite Helen quietly saying his name. You were her godfather. You knew the passages. You had keys. You knew the telephone system. You knew where Arthur kept his papers. Marcus. Lucy's voice cut through. He stopped. Neil's face had changed. Not guilty, wounded. Lucy softened. Knowing the house doesn't make him the killer. No. Marcus looked towards her. But it makes him capable. Oliver nodded. That distinction matters. Neil looked away. Lucy hated what the investigation was doing to them. Every truth about a person became a weapon. Every relationship became motive. Every useful skill became opportunity. Arthur had wanted them to understand how their lives intersected. Instead, they had begun treating every intersection as evidence of guilt. Helen seemed to reach the same conclusion. We are becoming easier to manipulate. The room quietened. Marcus looked towards her. What do you mean? The killer no longer needs to create suspicion. Helen folded her hands. We are creating it ourselves. Lucy looked down at the note. Stop looking at the dead and start looking at who benefits from every version of the truth. Benefits, she said. Oliver turned. That word? Yes. What about it? Lucy walked toward the drawing room table and laid the message beside Elliot's recovered notes. We've been treating every lie as though it exists to hide a crime. Andrew nodded. Some don't. Exactly. Marcus had hidden the Calder payment because he was ashamed. Helen had hidden Amelia's testimony because she feared judgment. Henry had hidden his friendship with Kay because he did not want to believe someone he loved was corrupt. Elliot had hidden restored photographs because he distrusted identification. Everyone had lied for different reasons. Lucy looked around the room, but the killer benefits from all of them. Oliver understood. Every secret gives them another suspect. Yes. They don't need to invent false evidence if everyone else supplies it. Helen nodded. The perfect defense is not innocence. Lucy looked towards her. It's complexity. Arthur's word. Again. The man was dead and still teaching them how to think. Lucy felt something begin to take shape. Not the killer's identity, the killer's method. Not how Arthur had died. How the murderer had survived suspicion. They had hidden inside other people's truths. Marcus sank into a chair. So we stop looking at secrets? No. Lucy shook her head. We stop assuming the secret itself is the reason someone killed. Oliver looked towards the evidence. Then what are we looking for? Lucy read the note again. Who benefits every time our attention changes direction? That was different. They began reconstructing the investigation from the start. Not by time, by suspicion. Arthur died. Suspicion had first gathered around Elliot because of his photography, his strange behavior, and the EB initials. Then EB became Edward Bell. Suspicion shifted towards Marcus because of the Calder Hotel, then towards Henry because of Amelia's hospital visit in Marrow, then Helen because of the suppressed testimony and the courthouse ring, then Elliot again when his secret restoration work emerged. Each revelation seemed to resolve one suspicion while opening another. Andrew wrote the names across several sheets of paper. Elliot, Marcus, Henry, Helen, Neil. He stopped. Evelyn and me haven't really had a turn. Marcus looked towards him. You say that like you're disappointed. I'm making an observation. Lucy stared at the list. There was something uncomfortable about it. Oliver saw it too. Who is missing? Lucy, Andrew said, and Oliver. Helen looked towards them, the two people leading the investigation. Lucy felt the significance immediately. They had rarely been treated as suspects because Arthur's death had assigned them roles almost instantly. Oliver became the policeman. Lucy became the journalist Arthur trusted. Those identities protected them, Marcus noticed. Well, this is awkward. Oliver did not react. Lucy did. You should include us. Andrew hesitated. Seriously? Yes. He wrote, Lucy, Oliver. The page looked different, more honest. Lucy studied her own name. Could she have killed Arthur? No, she knew she had not. But everyone else only had her word. She had spent private time with Arthur. He had shown her his investigation. He had chosen her specifically. She had access to information others did not. From Marcus's perspective, she probably looked exceptionally suspicious. That thought was strangely useful. What motive would I have? She asked. Marcus blinked. You want us to speculate? Yes. He considered. Arthur knew something damaging about your journalism career. Lucy's stomach tightened. Nobody in the room knew the full story of her past mistake. She had mentioned very little. Marcus saw her reaction. There. Oliver looked towards her. Is there? Lucy hesitated. This was the exact moment where she could either become another person, withholding truth, or follow the principle she had just argued. She chose. A few years ago, I published an investigation that implicated a counselor in corruption. Everyone listened. The evidence looked strong. What happened? Evelyn asked. I was wrong. The admission still hurt. The source had altered documents. The newspaper corrected the story, but by then the man's reputation was destroyed. Marcus stared. Arthur knew? I told him in the library. Oliver looked surprised. Lucy realized she had never told him. He said truth wasn't simply discovering what happened, it was understanding what happened to people. Helen nodded faintly. That sounds like Arthur. Lucy continued. So yes, if Arthur had evidence that I knowingly ruined someone's life, that could be motive. But did he? Andrew asked. No. You say. Marcus gave Lucy an apologetic look. You asked. I did. It was uncomfortable. It was also necessary. Oliver was next. What about me? Marcus looked almost pleased to finally have permission. Kay. Oliver nodded. You think I knew him better than I admitted? Yes. Anything else? Helen answered. You reviewed a file connected to Amelia years ago. Lucy looked sharply towards Oliver. That fact had been part of their early planning, but had barely surfaced in the present investigation. Oliver went still. How do you know that? Helen's expression did not change. Arthur told me. Lucy felt another small fracture of trust. When? Yesterday morning. Oliver looked towards Helen. What exactly did he say? That you had seen Amelia's name before. Lucy turned towards Oliver. Have you? His silence answered before he did. Yes. Marcus stood. You have got to be joking. Lucy stared at Oliver. You told me you knew of the case? No. I asked whether you had any connection to Amelia. I said I had reviewed an old missing person file that later intersected with her. That is not what you said. Oliver closed his eyes briefly. No. Lucy felt anger rise. Not because the lie proved anything, because he had spent days demanding everyone else tell the whole truth. What file? Oliver looked towards the others. Robert K. The room became silent. Marcus stared. Of course. Oliver continued before anyone could interrupt. 4 years ago, after Kay died, an internal review examined several older cases connected to him. I was assigned one. What case? Lucy asked. A missing person investigation. Who? Oliver's eyes moved towards the laptop. Sarah Mercer. Nobody spoke. Lucy felt the revelation land like a physical blow. You investigated Sarah? Yes. And you found nothing? No. Did Arthur know? Yes. Why didn't you tell us? Oliver's expression carried something Lucy had never seen before. Shame. Because I closed it. The room remained perfectly still. I concluded there was insufficient evidence that Sarah's disappearance involved criminality. She was an adult. She had withdrawn money, abandoned her tenancy, and apparently left voluntarily. Helen looked towards him. Apparently? Yes. You were wrong. I may have been. Lucy thought of the email. Sarah Mercer is alive. If Sarah is alive, your conclusion wasn't entirely wrong. No. Oliver shook his head. But Arthur believed I missed why she disappeared. What did he think? That she was running from someone. Lucy felt the theme repeating. Amelia had been followed. Vale disappeared. Sarah vanished. Arthur investigated. Everyone had accepted absence as explanation. What did Arthur say when he invited you? Lucy asked. Oliver looked towards her. That he wanted to discuss an old case. And you came. Yes. Knowing Sarah was connected? No. Do you expect me to believe that? Oliver met her gaze. I didn't connect the name Pembroke to Sarah's file until I saw Amelia's portrait. That sounded possible. It also sounded exactly like the kind of carefully literal answer Elliot had given them. Lucy hated that she noticed. Marcus did too. This is incredible. He looked around. Our investigator has been connected to the case for 4 years. Oliver did not argue. The note suddenly felt heavier. Do not trust the police. Lucy looked at him. Was Kay mentioned in Sarah's file? Yes. How? Former trustee, interviewed as background. By whom? Oliver swallowed. Me. Lucy felt the room shift. You interviewed Robert Kay? Once. What did he tell you? that Sarah had become emotionally unstable after Amelia's death and left Edinburgh because she blamed herself. Henry stood. That's a lie. Oliver turned. You know that? I know Sarah was frightened of Kay. Every face moved towards Henry. He seemed to realize he had revealed another fact too late. Lucy almost laughed from exhaustion. Of course you do. Henry looked towards her. I didn't know it mattered. Everything matters, remember? He nodded. I know. Oliver's expression hardened. How did you know Sarah feared Kay? Martin told me. When? Before he disappeared. The chain tightened. Martin Vale had known Sarah. Sarah knew Amelia. Kay knew everyone. Henry knew Kay and Martin. Oliver investigated Sarah after Kay's death. Arthur knew all of it. Lucy suddenly saw why Arthur had invited this particular group. Not because each person had touched Amelia's life randomly, because each possessed a fragment of a story nobody could reconstruct alone. Arthur had assembled a human archive, and the killer had murdered the archivist. Andrew looked towards the pages. This is what Arthur meant. Lucy turned. What? Different invitations, different reasons. He pointed towards the names. None of us had the whole story. Helen nodded slowly, because no single person knew it. Exactly. Arthur was going to put them together, not accuse them. Compare them. Lucy felt a surge of sadness. That had been his presentation. The Pembroke collection was not objects. It was testimony, memory, contradiction, people. And someone in the house had known that once everyone started talking, the truth would emerge. That was motive. Not simply protecting one secret, protecting a structure of secrets from collapsing. Oliver looked towards Lucy. Who benefits? She understood, the note, every version of the truth. Who benefited from Kay's version? Who benefited from Marcus's family keeping Belle quiet? Who benefited when Helen suppressed Amelia's testimony? Who benefited when Henry trusted Kay? Who benefited when Oliver closed Sarah's file? Not necessarily the people who made those decisions, someone above or behind them, someone who repeatedly survived because other people accepted the explanation placed in front of them. Lucy looked towards Sarah Mercer's photograph, then Clara Vale's. The fourth person. A woman nobody noticed because she never appeared central. Perhaps they had been thinking about the fourth person incorrectly again. Not invisible because she stayed away. Invisible because she made herself useful, helpful, peripheral, trusted, a psychologist, a program coordinator, a friend, someone who understood how people thought. Lucy felt her pulse quicken. Clara. Oliver looked towards her. What about her? She was a psychologist. Yes. She knew Amelia. Yes. She knew Martin. Yes. She worked around vulnerable people at Marrow. Helen's expression sharpened. And she would understand how to shape what people believed. Lucy nodded. Not proof, but pattern. The note's wording returned. Who benefits from every version of the truth? Someone who knew versions mattered. Stories, perception, memory, psychology. Then Lucy stopped. Something did not fit. If Clara is the killer... Oliver waited. How did she get here? Nobody answered. Neil looked towards the window. She could have come before the tide. And hidden where? The caretaker's cottage. Marcus frowned. Empty. Supposedly. Oliver stood. We check it. Lucy looked towards him. Now? Yes. The woman ran towards the chapel, which connects to the path near the cottage. Neil nodded. There's a woodland route. Oliver looked around. We all go. No objections. They collected coats and torches. The rain had eased again, though wind still moved through the trees around Ravensmere House. The caretaker's cottage stood several hundred yards north of the main building, partly hidden by woodland and an old stone wall. The walk took less than 10 minutes. Nobody spoke. Lucy remained beside Oliver. Not because she trusted him completely, not anymore, but because distrust did not erase usefulness. That was something Arthur would have understood. The cottage appeared between the trees, dark, small, one upstairs window. Neil stopped at the gate. Samuel left Thursday. Oliver looked towards the door. Key? Arthur had one. Spare? Neil reached beneath a stone ledge beside the porch. Nothing. His expression changed. It should be here. Oliver tried the handle. Unlocked. Everyone froze. He opened the door. The cottage smelled stale, not abandoned, occupied. A mug sat on the kitchen table, fresh coffee residue inside. A blanket lay across the sofa. Wet boots stood beside the fire. Marcus whispered, "Someone's been living here." Lucy moved slowly through the room. On the table rested newspapers from the past week. Food wrappers, a torch, batteries. Then she saw the wall. Photographs, dozens. Ravensmere House, the ferry landing, the causeway, the gardens, guests arriving, Lucy herself stepping from the ferry, Arthur greeting Oliver, Elliot photographing the cliffs. Someone had been watching them from before they entered the house. Evelyn covered her mouth. "Oh my God!" Oliver examined the photographs. "Don't touch anything." Nobody needed reminding. Lucy stared at one image. Arthur and Neil outside the boathouse. Another, Marcus walking alone near the conservatory. Another, Henry near the cedar tree. Another, Helen beneath Amelia's portrait. Then Lucy found herself, standing at her bedroom window, taken from outside. Her stomach turned. Whoever lived here had watched them sleep. Andrew looked toward the far wall. There's a map. A detailed plan of Ravensmere House had been pinned there. Service passages marked, telephone line, study, music room, cellar, gardens, cliff path, everything. Oliver stared. This is the operational plan. Lucy felt cold. Not improvisation, preparation. Weeks, perhaps months. Then Neil spoke. "Samuel." Everyone turned. "What?" He pointed towards a photograph pinned near the map. The caretaker. Samuel Calder. Older man. Bearded. Lucy recognized him immediately. The ferry crewman. The man who had checked her name against the manifest. The man who told her she was the last passenger. The opening of Chapter 1 returned with brutal clarity. There were 10 passengers aboard the ferry to Carwin Island, although the manifest listed only 9. Lucy felt the room tilt. He was on the ferry. Neil stared. "What?" "The crewman." Lucy pointed. "That's him." Neil went pale. "No." "You're sure?" Oliver asked. "Yes." "He checked my name." Neil shook his head. "Samuel doesn't work the ferry." Nobody spoke. The first chapter of their weekend rewrote itself in Lucy's mind. The crewman who knew the guest list, the raincoat, the strange 10th passenger, the manifest, the person who perhaps never existed, or had been used to make Lucy doubt what she saw. Oliver stared at Samuel Calder's photograph. "We find him." Lucy looked around the cottage. He may already be gone. Then Henry opened the pantry door. Someone was inside. A man, collapsed against the wall. Neil made a strangled sound. "Samuel!" Oliver moved first. Henry followed. Samuel Calder was alive. Barely. His wrists had been bound. Tape covered his mouth. A bruise darkened one side of his face. Henry checked his pulse. "He's breathing." Oliver removed the tape carefully. Samuel coughed violently. Neil knelt beside him. "Sam." The caretaker's eyes opened. Confusion, fear, then recognition. "Neil?" "Yes." "What happened?" Samuel tried to sit. Henry stopped him. "Stay still." Oliver leaned closer. "Who did this?" Samuel's eyes moved across the room. He saw Lucy, then the photographs, then the map. His expression collapsed into terror. "She's still here." Lucy felt every muscle in her body tighten. "Who?" Samuel swallowed. His voice was almost inaudible. "Clara." Nobody moved. Oliver looked towards the door. "Clara Vale?" Samuel nodded. Lucy felt the entire mystery narrow. "Where is she?" Samuel's eyes filled with fear. "She said Arthur had finally found her." His breathing quickened. Henry steadied him. She came here 3 days ago. Before us? Yes. She took your place on the ferry? Samuel looked confused. What ferry? Lucy stared. The crewman had not been Samuel. Someone had simply resembled him from a distance in bad weather, or wanted them to think so. Who was working the ferry Friday? Samuel's face went pale. Tom. Tom who? Tom Avery. Neil looked towards Lucy. She understood immediately. The name had never been on any list. Oliver continued. Where is Tom now? Samuel stared at him. I don't know. Then another memory seemed to surface. Clara asked about him. When? Thursday night. What did she ask? What time he finished? Lucy felt dread. The killer had been preparing before the weekend began. Oliver looked towards Samuel. Why did Clara come here? She said Arthur had asked her. Did he? No. How do you know? Arthur told me never to let her onto the island. The room became silent. Lucy looked towards Arthur's photographs. He had known Clara was dangerous, yet somehow she had reached Carwin anyway. Samuel swallowed. She wanted the house keys. Did you give them to her? No. What happened? She hit me. His voice shook. When I woke up, I was here. How long? I don't know. Did she have help? Samuel closed his eyes. I heard someone. Oliver leaned closer. Who? A man! Every person in the room went still. Lucy felt the endgame change again. Clara was not alone. Samuel opened his eyes. I never saw him. What did you hear? Arguing. About what? Samuel struggled to remember. One sentence. Oliver waited. Samuel looked towards Lucy. She said, Arthur invited him too. Lucy felt the significance immediately. Not an outsider, a guest, someone Clara had a connection to, someone already inside Ravensmere House. The killer might not be Clara, or not only Clara, someone among them had been working with her. Oliver slowly turned towards the others, 8 faces, 8 remaining guests. The shape of the truth had narrowed dramatically, but it had not narrowed enough. For several seconds, the caretaker's cottage held nothing but the sound of Samuel Calder's uneven breathing and the rain ticking against the small kitchen window. Nobody looked at anyone else directly. That, Lucy thought, was almost worse. The implication had entered the room too cleanly to be misunderstood. Clara Vale had not simply infiltrated Carwin Island and manipulated events from the shadows. According to Samuel, she had argued with a man about someone Arthur had invited. One of the guests. One of the people standing inside the cottage now. Oliver was the first to move. He closed the pantry door halfway, enough to give Henry room to treat Samuel without leaving the injured man exposed to 8 strangers staring at him. Samuel, he said quietly, I need you to think very carefully before you answer anything else. The caretaker nodded weakly. You heard a man arguing with Clara. Yes. Could you identify his voice? Samuel frowned. I don't think so. Accent? British. Marcus let out a breath that might have been laughter if the situation had contained anything remotely funny. Oliver ignored him. Scottish? Maybe. It was muffled. Old? Young? I couldn't tell. Did Clara use his name? Samuel closed his eyes, searching his memory. No. Did he use hers? Yes. Everyone reacted. Oliver leaned closer. He called her Clara? Samuel nodded. Once. Lucy felt the significance of that immediately. Not Dr. Vale, not Mrs. Vale. Clara, familiarity. How long did they argue? She asked. Samuel looked towards her. A few minutes, maybe longer. What did the man say? I couldn't hear most of it. Anything? Samuel swallowed. He said she had changed the plan. The cottage seemed to tighten around them again. Oliver's expression hardened. What plan? I don't know. Exact words. Samuel hesitated. I think he said, You've changed the plan twice already. Lucy felt a chill move through her. Twice. That suggested something much larger than a single murder. Arthur's death. Elliot's death. Perhaps neither had happened exactly as originally intended. Anything else? Oliver asked. Samuel's face tightened with effort. He said Arthur wasn't supposed to die that way. Nobody moved. Lucy felt the sentence land differently from everything before it. Not that Arthur wasn't supposed to die, that he wasn't supposed to die that way. Marcus looked towards Oliver. So Arthur was always going to be killed. Maybe. Marcus stared at him. You still need maybe? Yes. Oliver's voice remained firm. Because Samuel heard one sentence through a wall while injured and half-conscious. We use it. We do not turn it into scripture. Lucy understood the caution, but the implication would not leave her. If Clara and someone inside Ravensmere had planned Arthur's death in advance, then the weekend had never simply been an attempt to suppress his presentation at the last minute. The murder had been built into the gathering, perhaps even into the invitations. Henry finished checking Samuel's pupils and pulse. He needs a hospital. Oliver nodded. I know. He may have a concussion. Can he walk? Not safely. Neil looked towards the weather outside. We can carry him back. Marcus frowned. To Ravensmere? He can't stay here. No. Oliver looked towards the cottage door. And neither can we. Lucy understood why. They had just discovered the place Clara had been using as a base. If Clara remained nearby, the cottage was no longer shelter. It was evidence, and perhaps bait. Oliver turned towards Samuel. One last question before we move you. Samuel nodded. Did Clara ever mention Amelia? The effect was immediate. Fear replaced confusion. Yes. What did she say? Samuel looked towards the floor. She said Amelia ruined everything. Henry went still. Lucy crouched closer. What did she mean? I don't know. She said anything else? Samuel's lips tightened. She said Arthur had spent 10 years making his daughter into a saint. Neil's face hardened. That sounds like her. Everyone looked towards him. Lucy frowned. You knew Clara? Neil hesitated. Barely. Another omission. Marcus closed his eyes. Of course. Lucy looked directly at Neil. How barely? She came to Ravensmere twice. When? Years ago, before Amelia died. Why? To see Amelia. Did Arthur know? Yes. Did he like her? Neil's expression answered before his words did. No. Why? He thought Clara was manipulative. Henry looked towards Neil sharply. Arthur said that. Yes. When? After the second visit. Lucy thought of Arthur's patience, his ability to see complexity without surrendering judgment. What happened? Neil shook his head. I don't know exactly. Amelia and Arthur argued after Clara left. Amelia accused him of interfering in her life. Arthur said Clara was using her. For what? He wouldn't tell me. The story tightened again. Clara had not been peripheral to Amelia. She had been close enough to enter Ravensmere House years before. Close enough for Arthur to distrust her. Close enough for Amelia to defend her. Oliver stood. We moved Samuel first. Then we returned for the cottage properly. Marcus looked towards the photographs covering the walls. Shouldn't we take those? No. Someone could come back and destroy them. Oliver considered that. For once, Marcus had a point. Lucy looked around the room. The phone. A cheap mobile handset sat beside the newspapers. Oliver noticed it. He photographed the cottage first, then carefully placed the phone and several loose documents into clean freezer bags Neil found beneath the sink. He refused to remove the photographs from the walls, but documented each one from multiple angles. Andrew studied the map of Ravensmere. There are markings here. Lucy joined him. Small crosses had been drawn beside several rooms. Arthur's study, the drawing room, the cellar junction, the music room, Elliot's bedroom, then one more. Lucy's room. Her stomach tightened. Why mine? Oliver looked over. A handwritten note sat beside the mark. LG, keep close. Lucy stared. Marcus noticed. That's not threatening at all. Evelyn's face had gone pale. What does keep close mean? Nobody knew. Lucy forced herself to keep studying the map. One other mark appeared near the rear of Ravensmere House, a circle around a room she did not recognize. Neil. He came over. What room is this? Neil frowned. That's the old schoolroom. Where? Second floor, east wing. We haven't been there. No. What's inside? Mostly storage. Why would Clara mark it? Neil looked unsettled. I don't know. Oliver photographed the marking. We find out after Samuel is secure. The journey back to Ravensmere House felt longer than the walk out. Henry and Marcus carried Samuel between them, using an old kitchen chair reinforced with 2 lengths of wood from the cottage shed. Neil walked beside him, keeping one hand on Samuel's shoulder whenever the path narrowed. Oliver led. Lucy remained behind with Andrew, Evelyn, and Helen. Nobody spoke much. Each person seemed absorbed by the same thought. Clara had an accomplice, or at least a co-conspirator, and Samuel believed Arthur had invited that person. Lucy looked at the people ahead. Marcus, Henry, Neil, Oliver, Andrew beside her, Helen, Evelyn, herself. For days, suspicion had moved among them because of personal secrets. Now it had something more dangerous to feed upon. One of them might genuinely have been part of the plan. The rain eased as Ravensmere House emerged through the trees. Arthur's home no longer looked welcoming, it looked watched. Lucy wondered how many times Clara had stood in the caretaker's cottage, photographing those windows. How many conversations she had predicted, how many movements she had tracked, and what she had meant by keeping Lucy close. They settled Samuel in one of the ground floor guest rooms because Henry did not want him climbing stairs. Neil remained with him while Oliver called the mainland station. This time, everyone listened to the call on speaker. A woman answered. She identified herself by name, station, and caller number before Oliver asked. That alone seemed to reassure him. He explained Samuel's condition, the cottage, Clara Vale, the photographs, and the possibility of an accomplice among the guests. The officer's response came after several moments of silence. We have a launch en route with Coast Guard assistance. Weather has delayed them, but they are moving now. How long? 45 minutes, perhaps less. Oliver looked towards the windows. Call me when they are within sight of the island. We will. And use this number only. He read his mobile number. No house line. Understood. The call ended. Marcus looked towards him. 45 minutes. Yes, we've heard that sort of thing before. I know. Oliver looked toward the clock. But this time we verify every step. Lucy appreciated the change. No more trusting systems because they looked official. Arthur's entire investigation had warned them against that. The old schoolroom occupied the far end of the second floor east wing. Neil unlocked it with a key from the housekeeper's ring. The room was brighter than Lucy expected. Tall windows overlooked the bay, and faded alphabet cards still decorated part of one wall from the years when Arthur's nieces and nephews had apparently used the space. Most of the furniture had been pushed aside beneath dust sheets, leaving stacks of boxes along the edges. Nothing immediately seemed important. Then Andrew noticed the floor. Those marks are fresh. Parallel scratches ran across the boards beside a large wardrobe. Oliver looked towards Neil. Has that been moved recently? Not by me. Together, Oliver and Marcus shifted it several inches. A narrow door appeared behind it. Lucy stared. Another passage? Neil looked genuinely surprised. No. He tried the handle, unlocked. Beyond it lay a shallow storage recess, barely large enough for 2 people. Inside sat a folding chair, a small desk, batteries, a charger, and a radio receiver. Marcus gave a humorless laugh. Another office. Lucy stepped closer. Pinned above the desk were handwritten notes. Not Clara's operational map this time. Observations, dates, times, guest behavior, MH drinks when anxious, HS watches before answering, HS equals shame, not fear. OR attempts control through procedure. AW seeks approval from authority. EH responds to emotion before evidence. NF loyalty predictable. Lucy found her own line. LG asks the question after the question. Dangerous if isolated, useful if directed. She felt cold. Clara had studied them. Not merely their routines, their personalities. Henry read over her shoulder. She profiled everyone. Lucy looked towards him. She's a psychologist. Yes. She knew exactly how we'd react. Helen studied the notes. Not exactly. Lucy turned. What? Helen pointed towards her own line. Question mark. Shame, not fear. Clara was testing assumptions too. Oliver nodded. She wasn't omniscient. No. Helen looked around the hidden room. She was observing and adjusting. Lucy thought of Samuel's words. You've changed the plan twice already. Clara had adapted because reality had not behaved perfectly. Perhaps that was the weakness. The murderer had planned extensively, but plans had changed. Mistakes had happened. Elliot had seen something he shouldn't. Lucy had caught a figure outside the study. Arthur had died the wrong way. If they could identify where the plan broke, they might identify the accomplice. Andrew opened a drawer. Inside lay a printed list of the guests. Every name. Beside each one or two handwritten words. Marcus Hale, pressure. Helen Sinclair, guilt. Henry Shaw, loyalty. Andrew Wallace, validation. Neil Fraser, family. Evelyn Hart, memory. Oliver Reed, authority. Lucy Gilmore, truth. Arthur's name sat at the bottom. Arthur Pembroke, Amelia. One name was missing, Elliot Brooks. Lucy stared. Why isn't Elliot here? Oliver looked towards the sheet. He should be. Andrew checked beneath it. Nothing. Evelyn frowned. Maybe Clara didn't know he was invited. That possibility changed everything. Lucy looked towards Oliver. Arthur invited Elliot separately. Possibly. If Clara planned around the guest list and Elliot wasn't on hers, he was the variable. The unexpected person. The photographer who had restored images under Arthur's name. The man who distrusted certainty. The man who eventually discovered the right photograph. Lucy felt a sudden rush of understanding. That's why he died second. Everyone looked towards her. Arthur's death was planned. Elliot's wasn't. Oliver nodded slowly. Samuel heard Clara say the plan had changed. Elliot wasn't part of the original plan. He became dangerous. Lucy looked towards the empty space on the list. And the accomplice may not have expected him either. Andrew leaned against the desk. Then whoever was working with Clara knew the invited guests, but not Arthur's final edition. Oliver's eyes sharpened. Who knew Elliot was coming? Neil thought. Arthur. Anyone else? I didn't. Did you prepare his room? Arthur told me on Friday morning that an extra guest was arriving. Lucy remembered the ferry manifest. 9 names, 10 passengers, or perhaps 9 expected guests and 1 late addition. The opening mystery returned. What if the manifest discrepancy was Elliot? Oliver looked towards her. Not the woman you thought you saw. Maybe there never was a woman. Evelyn frowned. You were certain. I was tired, the ferry was moving, there were reflections everywhere. Lucy hated admitting it, but Elliot may have been the unlisted passenger. Andrew nodded. He came in from the rear deck after you boarded. Exactly. The crewman had said Lucy was the last name on his list. Elliot had already been aboard. Perhaps Arthur added him too late for the printed manifest. The elegant opening mystery suddenly had a mundane explanation. And that mundane explanation mattered enormously. Elliot was not part of Clara's original plan. He was Arthur's surprise. Arthur had introduced one variable Clara had not anticipated. The variable had ultimately found the truth and died for it. Oliver looked towards the profiling list. If Clara had an accomplice among us, that person knew the original guest list. Lucy nodded, but perhaps not about Elliot until arrival. which means we need to know when each of us first learned Elliot was coming. Marcus folded his arms. We were all on the ferry. Before that, nobody answered immediately. Helen spoke first. I didn't know any other names. Neither had Andrew. Marcus claimed the same. Henry, Evelyn, Lucy. Neil knew only that Arthur had invited several guests and that an extra room was needed Friday morning. Oliver said his invitation contained no guest list. The answer seemed to lead nowhere. Then Neil's expression changed. There was one person Arthur discussed the guest list with. Everyone turned. Who? Lucy asked. Neil hesitated. His solicitor. Marcus frowned. Not one of us. No. Neil looked towards Helen. Amelia's papers had legal complications. Arthur used Helen sometimes for informal advice, but his solicitor handled the actual arrangements. Helen nodded. Peter Ashdown. Could he be Clara's accomplice? Oliver asked. Neil shook his head. He's 76 and currently in France. Marcus sighed. Wonderful. Then Lucy saw Helen's expression. What? Helen looked towards Neil. Arthur did not use Peter for the invitations. Neil frowned. What do you mean? He asked me to review one of them. Everyone became quiet. When? 2 weeks ago. Whose? Helen looked towards Lucy. Yours. Lucy felt a chill. Why mine? Arthur was concerned it sounded too much like a professional commission and not enough like a personal invitation. That sounded exactly like Arthur. Did he show you anyone else's? No. Did you see the guest list? Helen hesitated. No. Oliver noticed the hesitation. Helen. She looked towards him. I saw part of it. Marcus closed his eyes. Of course you did. How many names? 7. Which 7? Helen thought. Lucy, Marcus, Henry, Andrew, Evelyn, Neil. She stopped. And me. Oliver frowned. No, Elliot. No. No, Oliver? Helen looked towards him. No. The room went still. 2 names absent from the earlier list. Elliot, Oliver. Lucy felt unease return. Oliver had said Arthur invited him to discuss an old case. Perhaps Arthur added him late too. How long before the weekend did Arthur invite you? Lucy asked. Oliver considered. 10 days. Helen saw the implication. I saw the list 14 days ago. So Oliver had been added later. Elliot perhaps even later than that. 2 late additions. A photographer who uncovered evidence, a police officer who had reviewed Sarah Mercer's disappearance. Arthur had altered his own plan. Perhaps because he had found new information. Perhaps because he realized he needed people Clara had not accounted for. That meant Oliver's presence might not make him more suspicious. It might make him more dangerous to the killer. Lucy looked towards the note again. Do not trust the police. Was that warning meant to protect her from Oliver or separate her from him? Clara's profile of Oliver returned. Attempts control through procedure. Lucy's, useful if directed. Clara wanted Lucy directed. Maybe the note was part of that. A tool, a way to break the investigative partnership that had been causing trouble. Lucy felt something settle into place. She wanted me to distrust you. Oliver looked towards her. That was my interpretation. Not because you're guilty. Maybe. Because we're useful together. Oliver said nothing. Lucy pointed towards her profile. Useful if directed. Then to Oliver's. Authority. Clara understands that I follow evidence and you follow people, Oliver said. She wants us separated. Possibly. Helen gave Lucy a small nod. That is considerably more persuasive than treating an anonymous note as gospel. Lucy almost smiled. Careful, you're agreeing with me. I have survived worse. The tension eased for perhaps 3 seconds. Then Evelyn spoke. There's something behind the list. She had been studying the board. A corner of paper protruded from beneath the profiling sheet. Oliver carefully lifted the top page. Beneath it was a photograph. Not old, taken recently. Arthur inside his study, alive, standing beside the window. Across from him stood a man. His back faced the camera. Lucy could not identify him. But the photograph had been taken from inside the hidden schoolroom, through a long lens. Arthur's study window was visible across the internal courtyard. Clara had been watching Arthur from here. Oliver turned the photograph over, writing on the back, Friday in 2214, the night they arrived. Arthur had met someone privately after dinner. The same night, he told everyone that Amelia connected them all. Who is that? Marcus asked. Nobody knew. Andrew leaned closer. Can we enlarge it? It's a print. Evelyn studied the man's posture. Tall enough, dark jacket, one hand in a pocket. Could be any of the men. Marcus looked towards Oliver. Here we go again. Lucy ignored him. Something in Arthur's posture mattered more. He wasn't defensive. He stood close to the man, relaxed, trusted. Then Lucy noticed the desk. The leather folder was absent. Instead, another object rested beside Arthur's hand, a small envelope. Oliver saw it too. The photograph? Maybe. Arthur had perhaps been showing someone evidence the night before he died, or receiving it. Neil stared at the image. I saw that envelope. Lucy turned. When? Saturday morning? Where? In Arthur's hand. What happened to it? Neil frowned. He put it in his jacket. Another item that had vanished. Lucy looked towards Oliver. You searched Arthur's pockets. Yes. No envelope. No. The missing Calder photograph. The missing envelope. Evidence leaving Arthur's possession around the time of his death. The man in this photograph might be the accomplice, or another person Arthur trusted. Either way, they now had a fixed moment. Friday at 22:14. Where was everyone after dinner? Oliver asked. Marcus laughed weakly. You want alibis from 3 nights ago? Yes, Lucy thought, and she had gone upstairs not long after Arthur's announcement. Evelyn had too. Andrew claimed he spent time in the library. Marcus said he had remained downstairs drinking with Henry. Henry frowned. For perhaps 20 minutes. Then, I went to bed. Helen remembered reading in the drawing room before retiring around 10. Neil had been cleaning the kitchen. Oliver said he walked outside briefly before going upstairs. Everyone began talking at once. Then Lucy saw Evelyn. The illustrator had gone completely still. What? Evelyn looked towards the photograph. The sleeve. Lucy looked. What about it? The man's jacket. Dark wool. Ordinary. He has something on the cuff. Andrew brought the photograph closer. A small mark. Almost invisible. White thread or paint. Evelyn stared. I saw that yesterday. Where? She looked around the room. Her eyes eventually settled upon Andrew. The history teacher froze. No! Evelyn looked apologetic. Your jacket? Andrew stared at her. My jacket? The brown one you wore when we arrived. Marcus immediately looked towards him. Andrew shook his head. That isn't my jacket. You have a white repair stitch on the left cuff. Yes. Same place? Andrew's face flushed. So do thousands of people. Oliver remained calm. Where is the jacket? In my room. We check. Andrew looked genuinely hurt. Oliver. We check everyone. The words were familiar. This time they sounded colder. Andrew's jacket hung inside his wardrobe. Brown wool, left cuff, a small white repair stitch. Lucy stared at it. The similarity to the photograph was undeniable. Andrew looked as though he might be sick. I did not meet Arthur Friday night. Oliver examined the jacket without touching it. Who repaired this? My mother. When? Christmas. Anyone borrow it? No. Were you wearing it after dinner? Yes. Lucy looked toward him. When did you take it off? When I went to bed. Anyone see you upstairs? Andrew shook his head. Marcus exhaled quietly. Suspicion shifted again. Lucy hated how easily it happened. Andrew had been one of the most open people in the house, Enthusiastic, self-deprecating. Arthur had liked him. Lucy had liked him. That meant nothing. Arthur had liked his killer too. Perhaps. Oliver looked towards Andrew. Tell me exactly what you did after dinner Friday. Andrew swallowed. I went to the library. For how long? I don't know. Half an hour? Then? Upstairs. Did you speak to Arthur? No. Did you enter his study? No. Did you receive anything from him? No. Lucy watched his face. He seemed frightened, but fear was not guilt. Helen's profile had taught them that. Why were you in the library? Lucy asked. Because I couldn't sleep. That early? Andrew's eyes shifted. There, a hesitation. Lucy felt disappointment before suspicion. What aren't you telling us? Andrew looked towards the others. Nothing. Andrew. He closed his eyes. I took something. Marcus gave a disbelieving laugh. Andrew glared. Not from Arthur. What? From the archive room. Lucy stared. You stole from Ravensmere? I borrowed it. Without asking? Yes. What? Andrew sat down. An old manuscript. Whose? Amelia's. The room became silent. Of course. What manuscript? Lucy asked. A draft article. About? The Marrow Foundation. Oliver's attention sharpened. Where is it? My bag. You've had it since Friday? Yes. Why hide it? Andrew looked ashamed. Because I wanted to read it before Arthur's presentation. His love of history, his insecurity, his desperate desire to know first. A personal flaw creating suspicious behavior. Exactly the pattern Arthur's killer had exploited repeatedly. Lucy almost felt relieved. Almost. Did the manuscript say anything useful? She asked. Andrew nodded. One thing. What? He looked towards Henry. Amelia believed Marrow wasn't primarily being used to move money. Henry frowned. What then? Information. Nobody spoke. Andrew continued. She believed vulnerable people in Marrow programs were being profiled. Lucy felt a chill. Profiled how? Medical history, addiction, debt, criminal records, relationships, family. Henry stared. That information was confidential. Yes. Who accessed it? Amelia didn't know. Andrew swallowed. But she believed someone was using it to identify people who could be manipulated. Blackmail, witnesses, sources, people whose stories could be controlled. Lucy looked towards Clara's behavioral notes on the cottage wall. Psychology, profiles, vulnerabilities. The method had been there from the beginning. Clara did not simply manipulate the people at Ravensmere House. She had been doing it for years. Where's the manuscript now? Oliver asked. Andrew looked towards his bag. In my room. Oliver nodded. We get it. They had nearly reached the bedroom door when Lucy stopped. A thought had surfaced. If Amelia knew Marrow was profiling vulnerable people, why investigate a hotel porter? Oliver looked towards her. Belle. Yes. What if Belle wasn't stealing valuables? Andrew frowned. The missing watches? What if those weren't what mattered? Lucy thought of hotel rooms, private documents, photographs, Belle entering spaces where people believed they were alone. Belle collected information. Oliver's eyes sharpened. Photographs, documents, things people could be threatened with, then pass them to Vale. Who had access to medical information? And Kay had police information. The three men suddenly formed a system. Belle collected private evidence. Vale accessed medical vulnerabilities. Kay controlled investigations. Clara, the psychologist, understood people well enough to identify pressure points. The fourth person, not an extra participant, the architect. Lucy felt the horror of it. They built people. Andrew frowned. What? Profiles. Lucy looked towards Oliver. Complete profiles. Enough to know exactly how to frighten someone, bribe someone, discredit someone, make someone withdraw evidence. Helen looked sick. The complainant against Bell. She withdrew because they knew what would make her withdraw. Henry sat down. God. Amelia had uncovered not simple corruption, but an apparatus for controlling truth. That explained Arthur's presentation. That explained the note. Who benefits from every version of the truth? Clara did, or whoever inherited what Clara had built. Oliver looked towards Lucy. And Arthur discovered the system? Yes. Then invited people whose decisions had unknowingly protected it. Lucy nodded. Helen's court ruling, Marcus's family payoff, Henry's trust in Kay, Oliver's closure of Sarah's case, Neil's loyalty to Arthur, Evelyn's sketch, Andrew's archive documents, Elliot's photographs, Lucy's journalism, different fragments. Together they could expose the entire structure. Someone had to stop them talking. A knock sounded from downstairs, 3 heavy knocks. Everyone froze. Not the telephone and the front door. Oliver looked at his watch. 42 minutes. The launch. Police, Marcus whispered. No one moved. The knocks came again. Oliver looked towards Lucy. Stay together. They descended as one group. Neil remained downstairs with Samuel and joined them in the hall. Another knock. Oliver approached the door without opening it. Identify yourself. A man's voice answered from outside. Detective Sergeant Graham Lennox, Police Scotland, Coast Guard launch. 2 officers with me. Oliver looked through the narrow side window. 3 figures stood outside in waterproof jackets. Behind them, beyond the garden, blue lights flickered faintly near the jetty. Real. Perhaps. Oliver did not open the door. Collar number. The officer provided it. Oliver called the station on his mobile. Verification took 2 minutes. Longest 2 minutes Lucy had experienced all weekend. Then Oliver finally unlocked the door. Cold air swept inside. The man on the step was in his 40s, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. He looked past Oliver, at the exhausted faces, at Amelia's portrait, at the locked rooms beyond. Inspector Reed? Yes. Lennox nodded. We'll take it from here. Relief should have arrived. Lucy felt none. Perhaps because the anonymous note remained folded inside her pocket. Do not trust the police. Perhaps because Robert Kay had once arrived with a badge, authority, and documentation, and Helen had believed him. Or perhaps because Clara had spent years understanding exactly how comforting authority could be. Lucy watched Detective Sergeant Lennox step inside Ravensmere House. Then she noticed the ring on his hand. Not large, not distinctive, nothing like Helen's, nothing like Sarah's, ordinary silver. Yet something in her mind snagged on it. Not the ring itself, the hand, a faint brown mark across 2 fingertips. The same kind of discoloration Henry had noticed on Arthur's hand after his death. Lucy stared. Lennox noticed. Everything all right? She lifted her eyes to his. Yes. The answer came naturally. Too naturally. For the first time since Arthur died, Lucy deliberately lied to the police.